2025年10月20日，那这是一篇讣告。诺贝尔奖得主、理论物理学家杨振宁于上周六在北京去世，享年103岁。然后我们来一起阅读一下，就是这位物理学家杨振宁的逝世，就是诺奖双星的合作与决裂。这是一篇就是一篇还不错的一个报道，可以让我们知道一些过去发生的事情。而且它也不再是仅限于就是国内的层面，大家都是更关注于就是杨振宁就是在82岁的时候与28岁的张帆结婚。所以说国内的舆论就是都是在讨论这个。那我相对来说，《纽约时报》的这一篇报道的话，我觉得会更有趣一些吧。Chen Ning Yang, Nobel-Winning Physicist, is dead at 100. Ning Yang, a Nobel Prize-winning theoretical physicist whose field for mathematical exercises helped reveal a surprising kink in the weave of nature, died on Saturday in Beijing. He was 100. His death was announced by the Tsinghua University in Beijing, where Dr. Yang taught for many years. Dr. Yang and a colleague, the physicist Chen Li, created a section in 1956, but by proposing that one of the four forces of nature might violate a seemingly exactly principle called conservation of property, a way of saying that the phenomenon and its mirror images should behave precisely the same. Their prediction was quickly burnt out by experiment, and they shared the Nobel Prize in Physics. When Dr. Yang retired from the State University of New York at Stony Brook University in 1999, a colleague, the distinguished physical Freeman Dyson, called him the preeminent stylist of 20th century physics, exceeded only by Albert Einstein and Paul Dirac. Dr. Yang's sense of mathematical beauty, Dr. Dyson said, turns these important calculations into miniature works of art and turns his deeper speculations into masterpieces. In later years, Dr. Yang became well known in China, where he helped lead the effort to promote basic research. His fame only increased when in 2004, at age 82, he married Wang Fan, a 28-year-old graduate student at the Guangdong University of Foreign Studies, whom he had met in 1995 when he served as an interpreter at an international physics seminar. He was quoted as saying in the newspaper The China Daily, his final blessing from God. Dr. Yang, he called himself Frank after Benjamin Franklin, was part of a generation of young theorists who, after World War II, were confronted with strange new particles bombarding the Earth as cosmic rays, begging for explanation. In 1956, he and Dr. Li took on one of the strongest particle now called the K meson or current that was first revealed by the trace it left in detectors lofty in balloons and placed on mountain tops. Sometimes a current broke into two smaller pieces called pinions, and sometimes it broke into three. That in itself was not so bad, so they decayed in a way that appeared to violate parity conservation, the measure system long short to pervade the physical world. Rather than accept the principle didn't apply to this nuclear decay, physicists were forced to persist the existence of two kinds of current. Charleston, the delta and the tau, identical in other respects, they distinguished in different ways. Like many theories, Dr. Yang and Dr. Li wondered whether the explanation was merely a contrivance, an ad hoc way to get an awkward experimental result. On a spring day in 1956, Dr. Yang, who was based in Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, NJ, and spending time at the Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island, came to New York City for a regular visit with Dr. Li, who was at Columbia University. At lunch at a nearby Chinese restaurant, the two scientists confronted the possibility that the weak force, the engine for nuclear disintegration, in no measure symmetry. In a landmark paper published in the Physical Review, they suggested how to find out. The Columbia physicist Chen Wang took on challenge and showed in an experimental at the National Bureau of Standards, now the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Washington. The parity was indeed warranted by the weak force. At the decade's atomic nuclei emitted more electrons in one direction than in the others. The symmetry didn't hold. The slow gears of Stockholm's shift into high, and in 1957 the two physicists were awarded perhaps the quickest Nobel Prize ever. They were the first Chinese-born laureates. People began to speak of Li and Yang on Li, as if they were a single person, unaware that their relationship would already become frayed. Ning Yang was born on October 1, 1922, although some published sources give the date as September 22, in Hefei, China, about 300 miles west of Shanghai. The elders of 5 children of Yang Wuzhi and Luo Menghua. His father was a professor of mathematics. Dr. Yang's family lived in Beijing during much of his childhood and earlier teens, but with the outbreak of war with Japan and family fled to Kunming in the south. In 1940, the courtyard of the family home was bombed as part of the Japanese effort to shut down the Burma Road, the British supply lie to the Chinese nationalists, which terminated in Kunming. After the bombing, the family moved to the suburb. Shortly after earning a master's degree in 1944 from Tsinghua University, which during the war had been relocated to Kunming from Beijing, Dr. Yang went to the United States on a fellowship, hoping to study at Columbia with Enrico Fermi, the Italian-born physicist who had overseen the first successful nuclear chain reaction. Surprised to find that Dr. Fermi was headed for the University of Chicago to work on Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb. Dr. Yang followed him there. It was Dr. Fermi, he later wrote, who taught him that instructions must be tested to experiment, that physics is to be built from the ground up, brick by brick, layer by layer. At Chicago, Dr. Yang met up with Dr. Li, an acquaintance from his student days in China, completing his series under Edward Teller, the Hungarian-born architect of the hydro bomb. Dr. Yang received his doctorate in 1948, and after teaching for a year at Chicago, moved to the Institute for Advanced Study to work for Robert Oppenheimer, who was then its director. Dr. Yang would recall one encounter he had with Institute's most famous faculty member, Dr. Einstein. Dr. Yang had just published a paper in a physical review, and Dr. Einstein wanted to discuss it with him. They spoke for an hour and a half, Dr. Yang said, but he did not get very much out of the conversation. He spoke very softly, he said, and I found it difficult to concentrate on his words, being quite overwhelmed by the nearness of a great physicist whom I had admired for so long. Once established in Princeton, Dr. Yang began spending his summers at Blue Heaven, where he and an office mate, Robert Mears, collaborated on what became known as the Yang-Mears theory, the scaffolding on which much of modern particle physics had been built. Using an idea called gauge theory that had been developed by the German mathematician Hermann W. Weyl, they created the gauge principle, which explained the interactions and, importantly, the self-interactions of electromagnetic, weak and strong force at the heart of quantum physics. At the time that we wrote it down, Dr. Yang said of the theory in 2006 interview at Stony Brook, nobody believed that it was important, and we didn't know that it was that important, but we said that this is a beautiful idea and the mathematical structure is very elegant, so we published a paper about it. And then 20 years later, various experiments showed that that was approximately the right direction. Thereafter, struggling for another 5 years, it became clear that it is not just approximately right, it's exactly right. He was also collaborating with Dr. Li, who moved to Columbia after a stint at the Institute for Advanced Study. Beginning in 1965, they published 32 papers together. But tensions was emerging in the partnership, and the two parties ways in 1962. To Dr. Li's consternation, Dr. Yang was sometimes poor rank, insisting that his name come first because he was 4 years older. For this and other reasons, Dr. Li wrote in a remembrance in 1986 that the delicate symmetry between Yang and myself was disturbed. Long after, in an interview published in New Days in 2000, Dr. Yang called the spill a tragedy. Dr. Yang was not always modest about his accomplishment. As he approached his 60th birthday, some admiring colleagues offered to contribute papers to a celebrated volume known as a festive wreath honoring his legacy. Dr. Yang concluded that a collection of him on paper with commentaries would be more interesting. In their anthology, he described their origins from the Nobel-Winning work on parity. Giving himself most of the credit, Dr. Li later published a very different account. Dr. Yang left the Institute for Advanced Study in 1966 to become Stony Brook Albert as team professor of physics and the director of what is now on the C.N. Yang Institute for Theoretical Physics. After a visit to China in 1971, Dr. Yang began reforging old ties. He would later serve as director of the Institute of Mathematical Scientists at the Chinese University of Hong Kong and as a professor at his alma mater, Tsinghua University. In 2016, he gave up his United citizen to become a citizen of China. Dr. Yang's wife of 33 years, Du Zhili, whom he had met in China when he was teaching middle school and she was a student, died in 2003. In addition to his second wife, Wang Fan, his survivors include 3 children from his first marriage, Franklin, Gilbert, Yilu Yang, and 2 grandchildren. In the interview with New Days, Dr. Yang said he doubted that physics would ever converge on a series of everything. Nature is extremely subtle, he said. I happened to think that the depth of the natural substance cannot be fathomed by mankind, because after we only have, let's say, 100 billion neurons, how can you match that with the infinite depth of the future? Thanks for listening. Hoping your life fully with happiness and joy.